Stop spraying multi-purpose lubricants into your guitar electronics right now. Your volume pot starts scratching, you grab that famous blue and yellow can from your garage and spray it in. The noise stops for 2 days, but underneath the pickguard, you just triggered a chemical reaction that is quietly melting the internal components of your guitar. There is a specific zero-residue engineering law you must follow to save your electronics, and it costs almost nothing. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to get your rig sorted out right now. So, let's jump straight into part 1, the chemical film fault. Look, I've been playing in bands, recording albums, and obsessing over my gear for over 30 years. I've sweat through countless club gigs, hauled heavy tube amps up flights of stairs at 2 a.m., and spent a lifetime chasing that perfect holy grail tone. And let me tell you, I still see this exact same mistake being made by guys who have been playing just as long as I have. We need to talk about the potentiometer, or what we all just call a pot. It is the absolute gatekeeper of your tone. Inside that little metal can, sitting directly under your volume knob, there's a delicate, paper-thin strip of carbon. As you turn your volume up and down, a tiny metal wiper physically slides across this carbon track. Think about it, how you roll back the volume on a roaring Marshall Plexi or a cranked Fender Bassman just to clean up the tone for a verse. That exact physical movement dictates whether your guitar sounds full and punchy or if it chokes out into a thin, awful static. It's an incredibly sensitive mechanical connection. It's not just a switch, it's a living part of your instrument.
So what happens? Your pot gets a little scratchy after a few smoky bar gigs? Or maybe it's just been sitting in the case too long. You walk out to the garage, grab a can of multi-purpose spray, and hose it down. The noise stops, so you think you fixed it, right? You didn't. You just created what the industry calls a chemical film fault, which basically means your guitar is going to sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies crackling loudly through your amp. See, that thick, wet, oily garage spray never actually evaporates. It sits there, wet, and acts exactly like a magnet for dirt. It immediately starts pulling in airborne dust, pet hair, and even tiny metal shavings caused by the physical friction of you turning the pot back and forth. You haven't cleaned a single thing. You just built a suffocating dirt trap right in the middle of your signal chain.
Which brings us to part 2, the disaster zone. If you crack open the professional bench manuals from companies like Bourne's, the people who actually manufacture these parts, they warn heavily against contact degradation. Now, contact degradation just means microscopic garbage is physically choking your signal, leaving you with a horrible spitting static sound every time you touch the dial. Minute foreign particles resulting from a harsh operating environment, and think about all that sweat, smoke, dust, and spilled beer from years of playing out, find their way right between the wiper and the carbon element. Every single time you turn that knob to adjust your volume, microscopic bits of metal and dirt get lodged right in the heart of your instrument. And here is where it gets really bad. Over the next few weeks, a complete physical breakdown takes place right under your fingers. That wet oil from your heavy garage spray mixes with all the trapped dust and those little metal shavings. Very quickly, this toxic mixture turns into a thick, black grinding paste. Think about taking a piece of coarse grit sandpaper to a fragile, thin piece of paper. As you turn the volume knob back and forth while you play your set, doing your volume swells, this paste physically scrapes and melts the carbon track away. You're basically turning your volume knob into a tiny rock tumbler, grinding the absolute life right out of the part. Eventually, the potentiometer permanently dies. You start getting dead spots where the sound completely cuts out mid-song, and there's no coming back from it. You can't ungrind the carbon. The part is ruined forever.
All right, part 3, the correct engineering fix. We know exactly what destroys the gear. Now let's pivot to the proper method, detailed in the professional bench manuals for saving your tone. On the left side of this debate, we have multi-purpose garage lube. Now this stuff is absolutely great for a squeaky wheelbarrow, heavy mechanical gears on a bicycle, or a rusty door hinge in your basement. But it is an absolute gear killer for a highly sensitive musical instrument. On the right, we have zero-residue contact cleaner. This is what the pros actually use on tour. This is what fixes the problem without melting your guitar from the inside out.
The law you absolutely must follow is using a volatile contact cleaner, which is just a highly refined precision spray that flashes off into the air instantly, leaving you with a dead silent, crystal clear tone. It's usually something like pure isopropyl alcohol under high pressure. The trick is, it does not hang around to cause trouble. When you spray it, the sheer pressure of the can blasts the heavy dirt right out of the housing. Then, the liquid vanishes completely into thin air in a matter of seconds. It leaves the sensitive electrical contacts completely bone dry, and because there's no oily residue left behind, there is nothing there to attract new dirt. Your carbon track is left perfectly clean, and it restores a completely silent, clear signal path straight to your amplifier.
Let's move on to part 4, the tone lineage. Let's talk about the real-world stakes here. This isn't just about a $5 part on a weekend practice guitar. We're talking about the tragic lifespan of components in some of the most sought-after vintage guitars on Earth. Let me paint a picture for you. Back in 1959, a legendary Gibson Les Paul gets a pristine factory installation of original central lab potentiometers. These are the holy grail parts. Fast forward 20-something years to 1982. A well-meaning owner hears a little scratch in the volume pot. He grabs the wet garage spray from his workbench and hits it. By 1983, that grinding paste we talked about has completely scraped away the original carbon track. By 1984, the original pot is totally dead. It gets clipped out with a pair of wire cutters and thrown in the trash. That vintage guitar permanently loses a piece of its original rock and roll history and a massive chunk of its financial value, simply because some guy didn't know the difference between professional contact cleaner and cheap door lube. Keeping original parts clean the right way preserves the true voice of the instrument. The volume knob on a classic guitar isn't just an on-off switch. It interacts directly with the pickups, like a vintage PAF humbucker, to create that specific dynamic response we all chase. It dictates the taper, the feel, and how the guitar cleans up when you dig in with your pick. When you clip out a 60-year-old part and replace it with a modern replacement off a shelf, the guitar physically changes. It just doesn't have the exact same soul. Doing this correctly preserves the history and the authentic tone of these high-end instruments. So, let's cover part 5, the emergency layout guide. Let's get down to the practical application. I'm going to walk you right through the step-by-step instructions for safely cleaning your components at home on your own workbench. First, unplug the guitar and safely access the control cavity. If you have a Stratocaster-style guitar, you're going to carefully remove the pickguard screws. If you have a Les Paul style, just take the plastic plate off the back. Now, before you do anything else, lay an old cotton t-shirt or a shop rag over the wood. You really want to protect your beautiful nitrocellulose finish from any overspray. Next, locate the pot. On the side of the metal casing, there's usually a small access hole right where the metal soldering tabs stick out. Take your zero-residue contact cleaner, put the precision straw directly against that tiny hole, and give it one very short burst. Do not flood the cavity. Less is more here. As soon as you spray, grab the knob on the front of the guitar and vigorously rotate it back and forth 20 to 30 times. This sweeps the carbon track and lets the cleaner break down all the grime. Finally, step back. Give it 10 to 15 seconds to evaporate completely. When you follow that simple layout, this is the result: a completely clean electrical signal path. This is the absolute foundation of an ultra-quiet professional guitar rig. When you eliminate the carbon track resistance, which essentially means peeling off that thick blanket of dirt so your guitar rings out with pure, hum-free clarity, your instrument can finally breathe. It will respond to your picking dynamics exactly the way it was designed to, without that annoying blanket of static sitting in the background ruining your gig. If you want to completely master the rest of your gear, the Complete Signal Chain Manual is your ultimate reference guide. I always say it's required reading for diagnosing and wiping out hum and signal degradation from your pickups all the way down the line to your amplifier speakers. It is literally the difference between sounding like an amateur buzzing away in a garage and a seasoned pro confidently owning the stage. Is your volume pot actually worn out and dead, or did a quick garage spray fix turn it into a trap for dirt that is suffocating your guitar's signal?